Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed the session earlier. So up next, we will have the distinct pleasure of hearing from Dr. Rimi Khan, Senior Lecturer from the Department of Communications and New Media at the NUS Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Dr. Rimi holds a PhD in Cultural Studies and possesses extensive teaching and research experience in the fields of creative entrepreneurship, cultural economy, and cultural diversity. A perfect example of her generosity and popularity is showcased by her willingness to conduct this masterclass despite being at an overseas conference right now. It is indeed our honor to secure her time, and she will be speaking on the topic of unleashing the power of creativity for the future economy, where the role of arts and cultural entrepreneurship is discussed in terms of driving creative innovation, leadership, and social change. Once again, there will be a dedicated Q&A segment after the talk. So to our virtual audience, feel free to type in your questions into the chat box next to your video. And for those who are attending physically, you can simply scan the QR code on screen and or approach the mic in the middle of the room later to pose any questions that you may have. With that said, please join me in welcoming Dr. Rimi to the virtual stage. Dr. Rimi, please.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me clearly. It's a pleasure to join you today, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you in person, but nevertheless, it's great that we can be connected virtually, and I'm looking forward to sharing my ideas and my research with you, and also engaging in a dialogue with you during the Q&A. So I'll just share my screen so you can see my slides. Okay, so I think you should be able to see that. Okay, so as was just shared, my presentation today is about unleashing the power of creativity for the future economy. And so I want to cover a few things in today's masterclass. I'll pick up actually on some of the themes that I heard you discussing in the earlier Q&A with Dr. Sean, which is a little bit about AI and human creativity and what it actually means to be human in the future economy. So I know we're all scared that AI is going to replace human beings, but hopefully what I tell you will help to allay your fears a little bit. So we'll start on those themes, and then I'll talk a little bit about what the creative economy is. Okay, so how can creativity be a progressive social and economic force? And then finally, how can we actually harness creativity through the arts and cultural entrepreneurship? Okay, so that's the journey that we're going on in today's masterclass. So I want to start with this artwork, right? And some of you may have seen this artwork before. So this is an artwork called Théâtre d'Opéra Spatial. Okay, and it's a beautiful artwork. We can see, you know, it's got a kind of dreamy quality to it. You know, we see this, it's got a kind of historical feel. You know, the characters are wearing these historical costumes, using this impressionistic painting style. And yet at the same time, it has a sort of futuristic feel about it. You know, the characters are sort of looking out through this portal onto this kind of slightly unknown alien landscape. It's almost like a kind of sci-fi scene. So it sort of brings together these historical elements with these futuristic elements, which makes it quite a striking artwork, right? And so this artwork actually won a prize. It won first place at the Colorado State Fair. So other people also agreed that this was quite an interesting and a unique artwork. But the prize money for this arts fair was actually only $300 US, so not a big deal. And yet this artwork was reported all over the world in news and media outlets in 2022, right? So that's why you may have seen this because it was actually reported quite widely. It made quite a big splash globally. So why was this the case? Why was this artwork such a big deal? Even though, you know, it was just a small art fair in the US that was otherwise unknown to the wider public. So the reason this artwork was such a big deal was because it was created with AI tools. Okay, so it was created with the AI tool Midjourney. And this caused quite a bit of controversy amongst artists and, you know, people in the art world. They basically were asking the question, you know, if an artwork is created with an AI tool, does it deserve a prize? And isn't this cheating, right? If you use AI to make an artwork, is this cheating? So the person who made this artwork used Midjourney, which is a generative AI tool. So it's a text to image tool. So they put in text prompts and it created images based on those text prompts. So there was a whole lot of debate, and you know, this quote came from one Twitter user who was an artist themselves, and they said, "We're watching the death of artistry unfold right before our eyes." And, you know, maybe in the future, there'll be no need for artists because we'll just have AI. So, you know, people were really worried about this. But I hope that, you know, what I share with you helps to kind of ease some of those worries. So the question was, is AI replacing human creativity, right? And one way we can look at this question is by considering the fact that actually new technologies and tools have always been part of creativity and art making. So what we're seeing with AI and these debates and concerns that we're having, people were actually having the same debates over 100 years ago when the camera was first invented. And people were saying, you know, now that we have photography and we can take these really realistic images, maybe we no longer need painting. You know, what's the point of painting if we have cameras and photography? So people were really worried. But actually what we found was that photography didn't kill painting, but it didn't mean the death of human creativity. It actually pushed creativity in new directions. So painting started experimenting with new approaches, new styles. We started to see abstract painting, more experimental approaches. And that's because painters and artists realize that they don't have to make realistic landscapes or realistic artworks anymore, because that's what photography is for. So now painting can kind of go off in a different direction. So that's one example of how new tools and technologies kind of changed creativity rather than replacing creativity. Okay, and another response to this question of whether AI is replacing human creativity is that AI isn't actually very good at being original or unpredictable, right? So if we know a little bit about AI, we know that the way that it works is by it learns from existing data sets that exist online. So, you know, it's very good at processing large amounts of information, you know, large data models and language models, and using those to come up with predictable responses, using those to kind of simulate human patterns of thought, human language patterns. So when we use ChatGPT, you know, it's basically like a very sophisticated form of predictive text, right? Like we have predictive text on our phones. So that's basically how AI works. It's good at being predictable, but it's not very good at being original or unpredictable. And a lot of people say that that is actually what human creativity is all about, that the best kind of exciting creative ideas happen when we look at existing information and we bring it together in unpredictable ways, right? So that's what AI is not very good at doing. So that's one response to this question of, is AI replacing human creativity? We can say that, it's not really doing that yet, because it's not very good at being unpredictable and experimental. And this is a quote from Robert Wong, who is the VP, so the Vice President of Google Creative Lab. Google Creative Lab, their whole objective is to create these AI-based creative tools. But even Robert Wong says that the strongest end product doesn't come from AI alone, but it comes from AI that is used by people with curiosity, creativity, and compassion. So I want us to pause for a moment and think about these qualities of curiosity, creativity, and compassion, right? Where do these qualities come from? And are these the things that actually make us uniquely human? And I would say that that is what makes us human. And these are the qualities that AI can't replace. So whenever people say, that is AI going to take over humans, or, will we lose our jobs? As long as we can offer these unique human qualities, there will still be a role for humans. So humans still have a role to play because we offer curiosity, creativity, and compassion. And those are the attributes that we bring and that we use when we're actually deploying AI tools. Okay, so being human in the future economy, being human in Industry 4.0. Okay, that's what I'm interested in. So Industry 4.0, right, that's a term that is used to describe the current industrial era that we live in. And Industry 4.0 refers to the smart and connected production systems that are designed to sense, predict, and interact with the physical world, and that helps us make decisions that support production in real time. Okay, so if anyone asks you what Industry 4.0 is, that's the definition. So it's all about the way that new technologies, new smart technologies are making us more socially connected. And this brings us benefits, right? It makes us more productive, more efficient, and more competitive. But it also requires new ways of working. Okay, we have to know how to use these technologies in a smart way, in a responsive way. So what are these new ways of working, and what are the skills that we need? You heard Dr. Sean in the earlier session talk about higher order skills, higher order decision making, right? So what are the human qualities and attributes that we need in order to do that? This is a question that the Singapore government has actually been thinking about. So they have this report called Skills Future SG, which actually identifies the skills needed for Industry 4.0. And they call these critical core skills. So you can see the range of different skills that are listed. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but basically these skills are the things that will help us to think critically, interact with others, adapt, learn, and grow. So it's basically saying that these are the skills that humans can offer, right? If we can cultivate these skills and develop and grow these skills within ourselves, then we're going to have an edge, right? We're going to have a competitive edge in Industry 4.0. So if we learn how to become really good critical thinkers, creative thinkers, we learn how to become inclusive, adaptive, all of these things, then that's what's going to help us stay relevant and be useful in Industry 4.0. And this framework actually, this is from a 2021 report, but it has an older history. So the Singapore government actually adapted their framework from this framework, which comes from the World Economic Forum. So this is a 2016 report that identifies these, what they call 21st century skills. Okay, so these are the skills that will be in demand in the 21st century. So, as we move further into the 21st century, these are the most relevant skills. So on the left, we have foundational literacies, right? So these are the kind of basic things that we all learn at school: literacy, numeracy, and so on. So we know how to get those skills. But the things on the right of this framework, so the competencies and the character qualities, they're a little bit more mysterious, right? We're still understanding where humans acquire these competencies and qualities, these soft skills, as we like to call them. So where do we learn how to be critical thinkers? How can we become more creative? How can we acquire curiosity and initiative, persistence and adaptability? Where do we get those character qualities? So this is a question that I've actually been looking at with a research team. So for a number of years, this is a study that we've been doing, kind of examining where we can cultivate these competencies and character qualities. So in this research, we're actually looking at the connection between 21st century skills and the arts. Because we're basically sort of looking at this hypothesis that the arts actually lead to stronger 21st century skills, whether that's through appreciating arts, as a kind of arts audience, or whether that's through actually making artworks and participating in arts projects, arts events. Okay, so where did we get this hypothesis from? Where does this idea come from, this connection between arts and 21st century skills? So it actually comes from a kind of long-standing body of thought in Western philosophy that has argued that the arts produces a well-rounded subject. So subject means human, right? A human subject. So they say that arts produces well-rounded human beings. So what does that mean, to be well-rounded? So, there's a lot of thinking that says that, humans are defined by this conflict between reason and sensory experience. Right. So we have the left brain and the right brain. One side is the more kind of sensory, emotional, creative side, and the other is the more kind of rational, logical side. And that we have this kind of conflict between these two sides. And it's been argued that the arts actually helps us to resolve this conflict and to keep those two sides in balance. If we look at the most celebrated artworks of human history, so artworks like the Mona Lisa that we're looking at here, this isn't just a random kind of splatter of colors and paint on a canvas, right? This is a very carefully considered, kind of arrangement of colors and textures, of light and shade. It has a very carefully thought out composition and structure, a balance of kind of light and darkness. So, the most beautiful and successful artworks are the ones that have this kind of balance to them. So that's how the arts kind of helps us to produce well-rounded human subjects, because it requires us to kind of balance the sort of sensory, sensual, emotional side with this kind of rational, structured side of human experience. And in order to experience the arts, we have to be perceptive, right? We have to perceive colors and light and shade and music and sound. So we have to be perceptive. We have to be empathetic. That means like being in tune with other people's experiences. We look at this painting, we wonder what Mona Lisa is thinking, what's on her mind. So it means being empathetic, and it means being responsive to what we see. So that has been argued to be the intrinsic value of the arts, right? That if we know how to appreciate the arts, then it means we're more balanced human beings. And in doing that, we become better human beings. We become, more perceptive, more empathetic, and more responsive. So this recognition of the value of the arts is something that has been described as civic humanism, that the arts makes us better humans and it makes us better citizens. And that's civic humanism. Okay, so I want to pause because I think I'm starting to cover some kind of like deeper historical ideas. So basically what I'm saying is that creativity is crucial for the future economy, right? Because creativity is what makes us human, and that is something that AI can't replace. So creativity is really important in the current moment. And this is why we need the arts, because the arts is what helps us to cultivate that creative thinking and that creative side of ourselves as human beings. Okay, so how do we position the arts in the future economies? What is the role of the arts? We looked at the Mona Lisa, which is a famous historical painting. But, how is that relevant today? And, how can we kind of leverage the arts today to make us better, more creative, critical thinking human beings? Okay, so a little bit of a history lesson, right? I started with the Mona Lisa. And then because of this recognition of the value of the arts, we have this modern philosophy of civic humanism. And this philosophy is something that governments all over the world have started to take on, in the last couple of 100 years. It led to governments subsidizing and sponsoring the arts through setting up big art museums, big galleries. In Singapore, we have the National Gallery, right? So that's a government-sponsored art institution that is part of the GLAM sector. So GLAM stands for Galleries, Libraries, Archives, and Museums. So these are the institutions that are set up so that the arts can be available, be accessible to everyone, because governments recognize that, like the arts have a very important role to play in society. It makes us better humans. So we need to make the arts available to everyone. Okay, so that was the kind of historical place of the arts in society. But then as we moved into the 20th century, we started to see new art forms develop. It's no longer just paintings, it's not just the Mona Lisa, but we started to see the emergence of film, television, music, and books. And the big change that happened in the 20th century was the development of new technologies, right? So new technologies meant that these art forms could reach new audiences. So we have music that has been, music's been around forever. Music has been around since humans have been around. But in the 20th century, we had the invention of broadcast technologies. So suddenly music could be transmitted, could be broadcast to thousands of people through the radio. Okay, so that kind of changed things. And it meant that suddenly you can actually make a lot of money from music, right? You're not just like performing music to 50 people in a kind of a music, in an opera center, but you're broadcasting music to thousands of people. You have a huge audience, and that means a big market. And so we see the same thing with film and television. Suddenly, it's not just sharing stories with small audiences, but potentially we have these huge mass audiences. So those changes started to happen in the 1930s and the 1940s. And today we have these huge global commercial entertainment industries. And this is what we call the cultural industries. So the US was really one of the pioneers in the cultural industries in the 20th century. So the US really invested a lot of money in this industry. So that's where we saw the rise of Hollywood in especially the 1930s onwards. Hollywood became, the huge film industry that the rest of the world started watching. So that's why, we're still so influenced by American popular culture because of Hollywood playing such a dominant role in the cultural industries. And that's because, they really recognized the power of the cultural industries to share stories around the world and to make a lot of money. Okay, so that was the 20th century. So what happens, more recently, we move from the cultural industries into this, what we call the creative industries. So the creative industries really brings together the arts, so the historical arts like painting, the Mona Lisa, all those traditional forms of creativity, combines them with the cultural industries. So the commercial sector, TV, media, new technologies. So all of those things combined is what we call the creative industries. Okay, so it involves individual creativity, a mass scale, it's state-owned, so the government is often involved in the creative industries, but it's also commercial. It also involves the corporate sector. So it's a huge part of the economy today. It's what we call the creative economy. And again, this shift started to happen because of another technological shift. In the 1980s, we saw the rise of ICT, so the rise of information communication technologies. It's when computers started to become popularized. It's when the internet started to emerge, and that completely changed the way that we connect with each other and also the way that we consume these cultural forms. So suddenly we can, we don't need to watch TV anymore, but we can share content online, we can create our own content, we can exchange ideas. And that's what's also been described as the knowledge economy. So that's the age that we live in now. We're in a knowledge economy. We're no longer in a manufacturing economy. So, earlier on in the 1980s, countries like Japan became very successful because they were manufacturing countries. They were making TVs, they were making radios and Walkmans that they were selling. Sony, the company, became very big through those technologies, through this hardware that they were selling. But now it's no longer about hardware, but it's about software and selling ideas and knowledge and creative content. Okay, and so this is a quote from Nicholas Garnham, who is a British media scholar. So he says that the creative industries are the key new growth sector of the economy, both nationally and globally. So he's saying again that, this is the new area of the economy. The manufacturing sector is in decline, and it's really in this creative space that we're going to see a lot of growth and where all the opportunities of the future economy lie. And hopefully this diagram helps you to understand all of the different kinds of activities that form part of the creative economy. So the creative economy is made up of the core arts. So we have the visual arts, performing arts, theatre, music, all of those kind of traditional art forms, right? Heritage, that's all part of the core arts. And they've been around for a long time. And then we add to that the cultural industries that I just described before. So film, TV, radio, music, books, and press. And then we have the creative industries. Okay, so that adds in things like design, right? Graphic design, architecture, fashion, advertising. So these are all creative practices, creative activities. But sometimes they're creative activities that form part of other activities as well. So, advertising is creative, but it's also, you might be part of a bigger kind of firm, a communications firm, or a design agency. So there are different kind of uses and practices of creativity that all form part of this creative economy. And in the creative economy, creativity is a market asset, right? So creativity is basically what is being traded. Creativity is exchanged in the market within the creative economy. So creativity, right? How do we define creativity? It's quite a difficult concept to define, but it involves individual talent. So there's, the individual kind of artist or genius, the individual entrepreneur. Then there is the creativity involves ideas over action. So, the creative artist versus the laborer. So if we have an architect, for example, the architect is the creative and the laborer is the one who builds the building, but the architect is the one that designs the building. So the creative is the person who has the ideas, who is the one who designs. And creativity involves novelty. So it's about creating something new. And it's in this newness, right, this innovation, that's where the value is in the creative economy. So if you can come up with a new idea, then that's what you can put a patent on, right? So that's something that you can copyright. And then if you can copyright that new idea, that novel idea, then that brings us economic value. Okay, so copyright gives us an incentive to come up with new ideas and hopefully capitalize on those ideas in the creative economy. Okay, so we know what the creative economy is. And just to give you a sense of its scale, right, it's really big. So globally in 2020, the creative economy was worth US $2,250 billion. So that's $2.25 trillion. And it employed 26.5 million people worldwide. So that gives you a feel for like how big the creative economy is and the range of opportunities that exist in the creative economy. So many different kinds of jobs and activities that take place within the creative cultural industries sector. And, these are some case studies, right? Some examples of successful national creative economies. So South Korea has built up a really successful creative economy. The government has this agency called Korea Creative Content Agency, and their role is to support creative industry development. And we're all familiar with these Korean creative products. So this is an example of, when a country, invests well in their creative economy. China is another interesting example, right? So China is starting to boom as a creative economy. We're all familiar with China as being a manufacturer, right? So, we all have products, we all have clothes that are made in China, right? Made in China is a kind of, brand for China. But lately, China is trying to change their brand. They're trying to change it to designed in China because they understand that actually it's in this creative thinking and in the design that the real value lies. So they're trying to kind of shift their image to being designed in China and trying to kind of elevate their creative economy. Okay, so we know how big creativity is and how important the creative economy is. So how can we harness creativity in the future economy? And my answer to that is we can do that through arts and cultural entrepreneurship. Okay, so entrepreneurship in the creative economy. What is entrepreneurship? So there are a few definitions, but basically entrepreneurship involves producing value by leveraging opportunity and taking a risk. So it means understanding the market. So you look at what exists around you. You look at what people are interested in. You look at market trends, cultural trends, creative trends, and then you take a risk. You kind of, you identify an opportunity because you think of an idea that no one has thought of before. And that idea might be a bit risky, right? So like I said, this is something that AI doesn't do. AI doesn't really take risks, but humans can take risks. You can identify something that no one has thought of before, and that's where the opportunity lies for innovation. So innovation involves dismantling and restructuring established institutions, ideas, and processes. So kind of taking apart what has been done before and then restructuring it into something new. Okay, so that's innovation, which is a key part of entrepreneurship. Okay, and then we endow those existing resources with new wealth producing capacity. So we kind of restructure things and we find ways to put new wealth producing capacity into those resources. Okay, so seeing an opportunity and thinking about how it can create new value and new wealth. At the same time, it's not just about money, right? So arts and cultural entrepreneurship is about making money, but it is also about finding artistic purpose and social purpose alongside economic activity and economic purpose. And that's all part of what we call the social turn in entrepreneurship. So we have, really famous entrepreneurs, like you have your Elon Musks and your Jeff Bezos, and that's fine if you're into tech and engineering and those kinds of things. But if you're interested in creativity, then you can also harness entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking to elevate creativity and creative activity. So I want to share with you an example just quickly of how creativity and cultural activity can also be very economically lucrative, can be very economically valuable. So some of you might be familiar with Australian Aboriginal artworks. And if you're not, then it might be a surprise to you to learn that this is a very economically kind of high value area. So these are artworks that are painted, in remote parts of Australia, very kind of low income areas. But some of these artworks are actually worth a huge amount of money. So this artwork, for example, is the highest value Aboriginal artwork that was sold for $2 million in 2007. So it shows, just how much these artworks can be worth. So there's definitely some opportunities to be involved in this art industry. Another case study is Ikunji Artists, which is an organisation that is based in Australia's Western Desert. It was established in 1992, and it started off as a very modest, small community organisation that basically just saw that there were few employment opportunities in this remote area. So they tried to create some opportunities. They set up a catering business. They started printing designs by local women onto T-shirts. And so the local women could have these sort of employment opportunities and make some income. But over time, this art centre started to grow a reputation as a fine art centre. People started to notice that there were actually some very unique and exciting artworks coming out of this centre. And today, this centre actually exhibits its artworks in international galleries and museums all over the world. And it also collaborates with fashion designers. So it prints artworks and designs onto textiles that have been part of international fashion runways. They've been profiled in Vogue magazine. They exhibit their designs and artworks in Paris. So on the right here, you can see some promotion for a recent exhibition that took place in France. So we can see how a very small arts enterprise, so using basic entrepreneurial thinking, then expanded and scaled up to develop this international profile. So, I hope that's a kind of inspiring example of how you can use the arts and culture to have a social impact, but also have an economic impact. Okay, so what next? So what can you do? You can engage with the arts yourself to cultivate your human capacities for creative and critical thinking, which we know will be a core part of the future economy. But you can also consider a career in arts and cultural entrepreneurship. So that's where this MA, this new master's course in arts and cultural entrepreneurship comes in. So this is a new course. It is the first master's course in Asia to focus on management, leadership, and entrepreneurship in the arts, cultural, and heritage sector. It offers new professional skills, knowledge about the creative and cultural industries. It gives you opportunities to learn from international experts and to think about the drivers of creative enterprise and how you can use creative imagination, innovative vision, and ethical sensibilities for your own creative startups. This MA course is for all kinds of students, so you don't have to have a background in the arts. We're open to students from a range of different backgrounds, from art, science, design, and engineering. It's open to professionals and teachers and to local and international students. And these are some of the possible careers that are available to you. So our graduates can end up in jobs as gallery curators, as cultural policymakers, as media industry professionals, as film festival producers, fashion entrepreneurs. So there's a whole range of pathways available to our MA ACE graduates. Okay, so I hope that gives you a bit of a taste. There's a lot more to say about the creative economy and how you can kind of get involved in the creative economy. But this is where I'll leave it for now. So if you want to find out more, then you can scan this QR code. But that's all from me for now. So thank you very much for your attention. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have about this Masters of Arts and Cultural Entrepreneurship.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Remy, for the very insightful presentation. An interesting topic breeds thought-provoking questions, right? So let's dive straight to the Q&A segment. But once again, before we get to the questions that were submitted online, any questions from the floor? Yeah, please.
Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering, you were talking about the definition of creativity and creative economies, and especially in the face of copyright issues dealing with AI. I was wondering if you thought that the definition of creativity and maybe the framework surrounding it would become more globalized, or whether it would become more culturally specific. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. It's a very interesting one, and actually it's one that we definitely spend some time thinking about and learning and researching about in our MA course, because it's not an easy question. We know that, because these new AI tools are emerging, the landscape is changing really quickly, right? So we're trying to keep up with it and trying to think about how we can protect artists' copyright, now that we have AI tools. And, that painting that I showed at the beginning, the way that those AI tools work is by looking at existing artworks and using those to create this new AI-generated artwork. And so artists are worried that these tools are kind of poaching, and like taking elements from their artworks without giving credit, without, any kind of monetary compensation to those artworks. So this is a potential problem in the future, and copyright frameworks do have to evolve to keep up with that. And this means that there are opportunities for lawyers and industry experts to kind of develop new frameworks that can protect the rights of artists while still allowing for AI to kind of flourish and to be a useful tool to us. So that's one challenge for the sector, and there's no easy answer to that, but that's something that, experts are working on. To answer your question about cultural specificity, I think you were asking, can we have copyright frameworks that protect artists from different cultures? Because copyright is actually a very Western framework that protects individual artists, and it's something that artists and creative communities from different parts of the world are starting to challenge, because they're finding that, their traditional art forms, traditional cultural heritage may not be protected by copyright. And it means that, for example, in the fashion industry, we see designers kind of copying traditional designs from community groups without giving credit, and kind of appropriating those designs. So yes, we do need copyright to adapt and ensure that we're taking into account the rights of these traditional community groups who have like much older forms of creativity, and make sure that we recognize those more traditional kinds of creativity within our contemporary copyright frameworks as well. So you've raised a really interesting question, and this is something that I look at in my research as well. And it's something that we need to keep doing research on by collaborating with creative communities from all over the world.
Thank you, Dr. Remy, and I hope that answers your question. Yeah, so I saw a couple of hands. Shall we have the next question, please?
Hello, Remy. I'm Audrey, and I wanna apply to your Master of Arts. So I'm very lucky to communicate with you. And I have a question. Do you think the technology and some modern science can combine with the art and some culture? Because I have programs, it's talk about the Singapore water history, and I think all the technology exhibition is only talk about technology. It's not about the culture and the arts. So do you think the exhibition and the museum or other museum and the technology can combine all the one things?
Okay, thank you, Audrey, for your question. I'm really happy to hear you're considering applying for the Masters. Yes, so I think technology plays a huge role in arts and cultural exhibitions, museums. So one thing that we really saw during COVID was that all of these museums and galleries that had to close, right, because of lockdown, they had to all pivot towards the digital. They had to digitize their exhibitions. They had to come up with new interactive ways for people to engage with artworks. So yeah, museums and galleries are really embracing digital technologies. We see a lot of artists who are using VR and AR tools, so using augmented reality so that, you kind of scan an artwork and then the artwork comes to life and you can interact with it. So there are many opportunities to use these new technologies when we're promoting the arts and culture. And it's really exciting to see the way that the arts is becoming much more interactive. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dr. Remy. Yeah, and thank you, Audrey, for the question. I hope it answers. So yeah, shall we have the next question?
Hi, Dr. Remy. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Ching Yi. I'm also interested in the Master of Arts and Cultural Entrepreneurship. So just wondering, when I was doing some research on the different courses offered in Singapore, there were several other programs from other institutions as well. So I understand that this course is more under the whole Industry 4.0, is more coursework based. For programs under, for example, like LaSalle, it seems like it's more research based. I think I kind of see the value in both, but I'm more leaning towards a coursework based masters. So I was wondering if there's a reason for structuring this masters like this, and then in the future, if there's ever a chance that it will evolve into a more research based masters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. So yes, it is a coursework masters. And the reason for that is because we have a lot of expertise within NUS on these topics, right? So we have experts in arts and cultural industries, in arts and cultural law, cultural analytics, so how to use data within the creative economy. That gives us an opportunity to share that knowledge with students, and we do that through coursework. We want to kind of give students access to the latest knowledge that exists, and kind of learn and engage with this cutting edge knowledge through the various courses that we offer. Having said that, it's quite flexible. So, there are only 2 core courses within the masters, and besides that, it's quite flexible, so you can choose your electives and choose how you want to customize your learning based on your interests. There is also opportunity for you to do your own research within the masters, so you can do a final year project where you come up with your own research project, or you can work with an industry client and do some research for them. So yeah, there are opportunities for you to do research within the coursework masters. So that hopefully gives you a balance of different ways of learning that help you learn in the way that is most relevant for you and can target your interests.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Remy, for sharing more about the structure of the program. Hope that addresses your concern as well. So any further questions from our physical audience? Anything about the program, anything about the topics that were discussed, anything about being, an NUS student, just about anything? Okay, if there isn't any, then maybe let's take a look at the questions that were submitted online. Okay, first question that we have here. As AI-related tools have been iterated faster and faster, from words, images to generate videos now, what will be humans' core competencies in the future? Dr. Remy?
Okay, yes, thank you. So that was the question that I was exploring at the beginning of the presentation. So really, I think that as AI tools become faster and more efficient, then humans will be the ones who mediate the AI tools. We decide how to use them and what we use them for. And we still decide, what kind of stories we want to tell, what sort of ideas we want to communicate. And we use those competencies of critical thinking, curiosity, compassion. If we decide that there is some social problem that exists in the world, or maybe a problem like climate change, right? So we decide that we want to address that problem. We want to, change the world in a certain way. So we make those higher level decisions about how to use AI tools, and we use those soft skills like critical thinking, leadership, empathy. All of those competencies are what will make us human in the future.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Remy, for sharing your thoughts. let's have a look at the next question, shall we? Okay, now that we have technological advancements, is deepfake technology considered a threat to the culture and the arts, particularly in the film industry? This was posted by Eric. So Dr. Remy, please.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Yes, so some people do consider these technologies, deep fake to be a threat. If it can be so easy to emulate, human figures and kind of make these very convincing kind of films very easily through these technologies, right? So it is a little bit threatening, but at the same time, what we're finding is that these AI generated cultural products, they're not very engaging. There's a lot of criticism of what we're seeing. Like they're not very kind of profound or thought-provoking or very original. I mean, yes, they look very convincing, but they're not very creatively challenging. They don't necessarily present us with new ideas. Like I said, these technologies are very good at simulating what already exists. That's what deepfake does, right? It kind of takes something that already exists and puts it in a new frame, but it's still just kind of repeating the same kind of imagery. But it's not going to present us with a new film that is really thought-provoking and that really kind of pushes the boundaries of our kind of creative thinking. So that's where it's not really a threat, because we'll still need humans to kind of come up with new stories and kind of experiment with new ideas. So I think that hopefully answers that question.
Thank you, Dr. Remy. I hope that answers the question for you, Eric. And let's have the next question. Okay, how do we measure the value of an artwork that is generated using AI technology, and how to face the copyright challenges that are involved in the AI arts? So this question is posted by Jiaming. Dr. Remy, please.
Okay, thanks. So the first part of the question, how to measure the value of an artwork generated by AI. Yeah, that is a question that's been considered because more and more artists are using digital tools and AI tools. In a lot of art competitions, for example, the one that I shared with you earlier, there already was a category within that art competition for artworks made with digital tools. Using digital tools, digital editing tools, for example. So one way of measuring the value is like by putting those artworks in a separate category. So we kind of know that they're using those tools, and then we can measure them based on how well they use those tools, how innovative they're being in the use of those tools and so on. So that artwork that I showed you, actually, the artist said that they spent more than 80 hours creating that artwork through, like a series of hundreds and hundreds of prompts that they used to achieve that artwork. So actually, it didn't just use the AI tool in a very simple way. It used the AI platform in quite a complex way. So learning how to use these AI technologies will be a skill in itself. And so maybe there will be a kind of separate category where we kind of measure and evaluate how well people use these AI tools. So that's one possibility. And then how to face the copyright challenges. I think I kind of addressed that in the previous question. So yeah, it's something that legal frameworks, lawyers are dealing with right now, how to address those copyright challenges. It might be that, we have to kind of work out how to credit artists, how to give royalties to artists, Maybe artists have to give permission for their artworks to be part of the data sets that AI tools use, and maybe they get paid to be part of those data sets, and then that gives them some protection, some copyright protection. But yeah, this is definitely a question that's being asked now, and we're still working out the answer.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Remy. So the time is almost up for this session. So maybe let's have one last question before we wrap things up, shall we? One last question. Okay, this question is posted by Debrian, and which says, the creative economy grows many new entrepreneurs to support the economy. What about sustainability and its impact on the environment, like ecopreneurship? So yeah, Dr. Remy, please.
Yeah, good question. So this is actually a great interest of mine as well. So I've done a lot of research on creative enterprises that are sustainable, that have this objective of sustainability. So I look at fashion enterprises, right? So sustainable fashion is a big topic at the moment, and there are a lot of fashion entrepreneurs who are trying to, on the one hand, be creative and be successful within the fashion market, but at the same time to have a positive environmental impact or to reduce their carbon footprint. So the challenge for them is to do both of those things at the same time. And they can do that by using new approaches to textile making, using zero waste design, right? So that's like using the fabric in a way where there's like a minimal amount of waste. So they're not like getting rid of waste fabrics, using circular economy approaches. So instead of using new fabrics, they're using surplus materials from factories and using that within their designs. So there's many different strategies for being a sustainable entrepreneur. But this is definitely a growing movement and I think, a very exciting new area within the creative economy.
Thank you. And with that last concluding question, thank you, Dr. Remy, once again for answering the wide-ranging questions posted by our audience. And to the audience, we invite you to share your views on this particular session.